Can you comment on something for me, Romola? Sylvie Paula Paula. Is this one of your compatriots? I swear this is a VTuber. I thought it was going to be about my last tweet. I have no idea what you tweeted. Recently been thinking about how character playstyles are dictated by a top player who stands out first by either excelling at a character, knowledge checks and RPS, or fundamental play. Yeah, that I could see that. I think a lot of players have been significantly held back by a community consensus on how a character should be played with no real attention paid to general fighting game concepts beyond a single player's benchmark. Yeah, I mean, a good example of that is like I never saw a Soul player run forward and then do like air dash back like 5 times in a row. And then Mochi won a tournament and everybody was like, I gotta do that. That's apparently what I'm missing. They don't know like why exactly they gotta do that, but they're like, this guy's winning. I'm gonna literally just do that. Characters have moments where they have breakouts, right? Nago first doing well. There's Fame like playing a really solid kind of fundamental version of the character. And then there's Hotashi figuring out how to actually use all of his tools to literally twerk on you and force really strong weighted RPS and scrambles that Hotashi is really good with. Those are like the 2 breakout moments for the character, and you can X copy either style. I feel like most people were like, Hotashi looks like more fun, and they were like, I'm gonna do that one. And like the next real breakout Nago in terms of players here in the West, it was like Nubenheimer, right? And Nubenheimer also has a very different playstyle. And like if you try to play like Hotashi and you're not good at scrambles and knowing how to like RPS really well, you're just gonna fucking lose. What you should actually do is like watch them and be like, what works and like what doesn't work and like what works for me, what fits my playstyle well. And then also try and recognize things that don't fit your playstyle but might be good for you to use, or figure out how to do something similar within the same game plan. For me, when I watch people, it's very often I'm like, this person's playstyle is legitimately the opposite of mine. They do stuff that I would never do. But that kind of stuff happens to me constantly. Where I watch someone who's not even playing the same character as me and I see something and I'm like, oh, I bet you my character can do something really similar. It's very rare that your playstyle and someone else's are like the exact same. And even if they're very similar, you probably have different strengths and weaknesses. My playstyle, I would say, is more similar to Darkrai's Gold Lewis than it is to Gobo's. But I also don't play the same way as Darkrai. A lot of the stuff that Gobo does to me, I'm like, this guy is on some wild shit. He's drinking some slurp juice and twerking. I still watch his footage and think like, oh, you know what? That was actually really sick. I like that. With Darkrai, there's also things that I see that I'm like, okay, this is more my playstyle, but there are things that he does that I don't do and things that I do that he doesn't do. I think copying is not a bad thing. In the beginning, you should copy and then figure out what actually works and what doesn't work, and then remove stuff and change stuff and rethink your ideas. But if you can watch something and instead of just straight copying, think like, well, why is this good? Or like, what can I take away from this that's actually useful for me? Then that's something to think about. You watch Sonic Fox play, they're doing like the cheapest things a character can do. And then the more profound part of their gameplay is that they're just right all the time on player interactions, like constantly. Well, if I was just able to win every 50-50 RPS situation ever, then I could be as good as Sonic Fox doing this. But I can't, so I can't copy their playstyle. The reason that's happening is because you are missing something. Maybe you're missing a lot of things. You might just not be exerting enough pressure to get away with like the quote unquote bad options. There's like so many reasons. It could be that they're really good at conditioning, or they're overwhelming their opponent, or they're reacting really fast, or they just do it very rarely. They recognize their opponent doesn't know. Their opponent's character has bad options for it. Like there's like a million reasons. It's almost never just I'm unlucky and my opponent won't respect me the same. It's like they're doing lots of things to enable them to get away with stuff, and people just don't think about that. And I think these two are the most obvious things that people pick up. They either pick up, oh, these special moves are funny and I can do them in this way, or they pick up the fundamental sound version of a character. It's the same reason that like run up and air dash back with Mochi over and over. You don't understand how he's using his air movement. It's hard to have good air movement in this game because of how huge the anti-airs are. They're humongous. So if you don't know how to space your empty jumps and time your air dashes and even air dash FDs, you're going to have some problems relative to someone like Mochi, who is really good at using Bandit Bringer, air dash back, empty jumps to like force whiffs and like jump H whiffs and like all this other stuff that he's representing. A lot of people don't realize how many crutches they have with their own character. That's a classic one, is like when a grappler is low tier and they switch to like another character, they're like, wait, what do I punish this with? I used to just SPD this and like, or command grab punish this all the time and get my best Oki. I actually don't know a punish. And then you're like, oh yeah, my character gets jab. You're like, wait, what? I played Nightwing and Martian Manhunter, who are like opposite sides of the tier list. But Nightwing had a stance where he had a crouching jab that was 6 frames and +3 on block. And every time someone was near me on defense, I would just mash crouching jab. Going to another character who doesn't have a plus on block jab that they can just mash afterwards is like, oh, I see. I don't just get to flail and people have to respect me when they're near me. That is like almost every comment on somebody who plays like a bad character is if this person just played a good character, then they would be cooking, not recognizing that the character enables a lot of the stuff that they're doing, right? And they have crafted a game plan that works well with that character. People who are usually reliant on like fundamental solid stuff, if it's not working, trying to change their game plan is usually quite hard because they default to like passive, safe, very functional stuff. And like if they need to now take more risks or like pick up the pace or do something like that, they really are gonna not be able to do it. Whereas if your primary thing is RPSing, they are probably going to RPS their way into situations where they're like, I have to mash or do this here, when like in reality, you either win the game immediately or lose the game immediately on every situation. You got to know how to do both or find a nice rhythm for your playstyle that allows you to switch between them. And it's generally experience, and you got to like actually think about what you're doing, because like just grinding mindlessly will never help in that sense. Like once you have your game plan figured out, then it is indeed about mashing games until you're ready to like just play it without thinking. Players usually struggle with one of those two things. Either they play a lot and don't think enough about their matches, or they think too much and they don't grind enough to have the muscle memory to just do the right things over and over, or like have experienced all the scenarios they need to experience and like have the right answers in their head. Listen. I saw someone's tier list and they were like, yeah, when Gold Lewis came out, he was terrible. And then he got good with other patches, which is funny because that's the opposite of what happened. He actually got nerfed because they made FD Effect Guard Crush and then got buffed. You could not get away from him on release. You actually could not escape him. Think about doing 268 BT, but like you never got this. In hindsight, it was unbelievably powerful.